I got to read the story.
All right.
This one is near and dear to my heart.
Yes.
When I saw the story, I was like, I don't want to talk about comics. And then I read it and I was like, oh,
Gotta talk about
how
it.
dare they? Bounding into Comics says DC Comics retcon sees Static receive powers during Black Lives Matter protest. Okay, first I was just like, all right, well, it's a modern retelling of a comic book story. Black Lives Matter can be relevant to this. And then I read the panels they included, and I'm just like, this is really bad. It's really bad. So I don't know if I need to necessarily read the. I'll read a little bit. They say a recent retcon to the origin story of the DC comic superhero Static. Real identity Virgil Hawkins has changed the inciting incident that grants him superpowers from a gang war to a Black Lives Matter protest. Okay, there is so much wrong with this. I'll need to actually read the comic to give you a better breakdown. But let me just explain something. In the original comic, he's a good kid, but he's being bullied. He gets a gun and he shows up at this gang war and he wants to take out his bully. He wants to kill his bully, but he decides he can't do it. He starts crying and he throws the gun into the water. But then the police, seeing a gang war, people are trying to kill each other, fire an experimental tear gas, which caused some crazy reaction. They call it the Big Bang. And then all of a sudden, all these gangbangers get superpowers. Well, guess what? These are not good people, right? Turns out they become supervillains. But this kid who was down there, who actually was an okay kid, just mixed up in some bad stuff, ends up becoming a hero. In the later version, the more recent version, they're still all still pretty old. The WB cartoon Static Shock. He basically gets pressured into joining a gang he doesn't want to join. So I thought that was a really awesome way to deal with issues that I knew exactly what that was like growing up on the south side of Chicago. I knew people who were surrounded by people in gangs who were like, "Are you joining or not? You have to join. You live in our area." And it's called VED. You get VED in, you get violated. And so what they do is they would beat the crap out of these kids who were like 14 or 15, force them to join gangs. One dude went to prison because what they want to do is they want to get a minor, give him a gun and say, go and kill our enemies because you'll get out in 4 years because they can't hold you until you're 18. So when I saw this show, I was like, wow, that's clever, right? It actually gets to, like real issues that I think affect young people. They don't want to get mixed up in this stuff. It addressed social justice issues in a really cool way. And it actually told an interesting story. There's a chemical explosion. The people who are there happen to be mostly gangbangers, mostly become supervillains. Now this kid who gets mixed up in it, he's like, I didn't want to be here in the first place. I'm going to do good. I'm going to try and be better. My question now is, in the new version, they're all at a Black Lives Matter protest, right? And for no reason, the police start shooting them with tear gas. So in this comic, the cop says, who do they think they are? Turn around and get back to school or be arrested for truancy. And then someone yells, stop killing innocent people and we will. Someone holding a sign that says she was sleeping. Fine then, let him fly, says the cop as they start shooting this tear gas at the crowd. Almost instantly, one dude's skin starts melting off, and the cop is like, is that kid's face melting? And then all of a sudden, they all have superpowers. So, this is the story. The cops fire tear gas at a random group of Black Lives Matter protesters. They all get superpowers. I got a question about this. Where do the villains come from?
Well, I guess that'd be the police in this scenario.
Yeah.
Sting, Copeland, all of them.
Well, no, I mean
Yes,
they are portraying the cops as the bad guys. But
It's gotta be, right?
No, but what I mean is the cops in the comic are all wearing gas masks. In the original version, it was gangbangers getting gassed.
Yeah.
And so naturally, many of these people are not good people, become villains.
Well, what do they say? Where do they say the villains do come from?
I don't know. It just says he's like, I got
totally
powers.
incomplete.
But hold on, here's the funny thing. He says, here's what it says. He goes, I don't know what the first panel is. It's just him waking up saying, which made me stronger than I could ever imagine. Then electricity burst from his eyes. Now I could get revenge on all the bullies who picked on me, who pick on everybody. But it turns out they have powers too. And it's 3 white dudes, and it's like blonde hair, blue-eyed guy. And they're bullies.
Yeah,
one
of
guy's
course.
like shirts ripping as he's all ripped. One guy's fist is on fire.
Were they at the protest
and,
too?
And I'm just like,
Essentially 3 Biff from Back to the Future.
yes,
exactly.
But does this mean they were also protesting for Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, why
Like-
were they there? Oh, because they
like-
weren't there protesting against it.
Oh, but yeah, maybe.
Maybe that's
yeah.
it.
They were there,
See, what
They were-
they
Is
needed,
it?
they needed Antifa there. They were also violent protesters that then became villains. But instead, they framed the cops.
They had
as the-
all bullies' lives matters on
All
the
bullies'
shirt,
lives
yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
I wonder if the angle they're going for is that the bullies are bad guys and they're like, we're going to rob this bank. And then he's like, you were at the Black Lives Matter protest too, but you're a villain. Well, hold on. We may be villains, but we all agree Black Lives Matter.
That's right.
So that's just implied.
Right. So that's the angle they're going for. Well, of course the villains were there. Even the villains agree.
Yeah, it's almost like they chose this topic, but it was so sensitive that they had to sort of illogically decide kind of the rest of the plot line.
I'm
It's
just
a train wreck.
I should have expected that, this is the angle they would go, but it really does feel like cheap. I'm not trying to be mean to Black Lives Matter or anything. I mean, we've talked about them quite a bit. I've been critical over the riots, but like one of the biggest problems with Star Wars latest iterations and like Captain Marvel and a lot of these new comics is that it's just really cheap writing. It's not clever. It's not good. It's not interesting. It's just really obvious. Like it's a dude sitting there with his eyes half closed and he's like, I don't know, he's a Black Lives Matter protest or something. Just write it down and sell it, whatever.
Like it used to be that whenever you're getting propaganda, period, the hope is that it's good enough that you'll take your propaganda. Like I'll be watching certain shows and you can kind of tell when it's really getting into that stuff and they're trying to sell you something. You go, okay. And then there's another one where the show sucks and you're like, hey, there's 12 characters and 11 of them are gay. And you're like, this isn't good enough for how much you're shoving this down my face. So I think the problem is, it's like anything in any art or songs, anything you're listening to. It's like, you get to give me a teaspoon of propaganda per good amount of entertainment.
Yep. Right.
And then
There's
I think that they are tipping the scales where the propaganda levels are out of the ballpark.
But I mean, like I bet the argument from the left will be the original Static Shock cartoon was very much social justice-y, but it was the liberal kind. I mean like philosophically liberal, where it was just, hey man, don't be mean to somebody for no reason. Don't be racist. Now it's just like, this just seems like, what do they call it? They call it rainbow washing when you just make something, LGBTQ to sell a product. It's kind of like social justice wash, and they're like, that's cheap. Static, so just
Well,
make
I think
it Black
there's
Lives
probably
Matter.
so much logistical things too. It's the same thing that happened with, recently we were talking about, even this is on Amazon, but I'm sure you guys cover like Potato Head and all that stuff. But it's like, they basically were like, oh, there's an easy way to kind of get clicks, and your new advertising campaign comes in, and they go, yo, all you have to do is this. But then now, even on that side, they go, hey, you didn't do it right. And then the other side gets mad at them. So I think in a lot of ways, the like easy bucks to be made off social justice are becoming harder and harder. So, you know what I mean?
like-
They're like,
like-
oh, we'll do this. Everyone will like it.
You got extra virgin olive oil, you got extra virgin olive oil, and you got virgin, and you got olive oil. And so
Yeah.
it's like the very last drop being squeezed.
Yeah, they're trying
out
to
of-
squeeze out the last drop of money that you can get from, saying you've got the right opinions. So I think when you do this, it's like, I think that you probably end up making a lot of decisions and choices based on things other than what makes sense for your plot, probably.
Have you guys seen the new Craft movie?
No.
It's called The Craft, right? You've
No,
seen
I think you've talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the witches?
Yeah, The Witches.
No.
Bro, if you want material, you should watch The Craft.
Yeah, I'm progressive. I only support male witches because I think that.
Well, you'll love it
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there's
yeah.
one in the movie. It's great.
Yeah, of course there is.
They basically, a spoiler alert for anybody who plans on seeing this movie. There's a bully and they cast a spell to turn him gay, I guess. I think that's what happens. And then he gets murdered for being gay.
Or they didn't cast a spell, and he's like, it was a spell. His girlfriend's like, what happened? These freaking witches, man.
No,
Why are you blowing a dude? Have you heard of witches?
Now everybody who's listening will have a clever excuse if they ever need to use one.
Witches. Dad, it was the friggin'. Didn't you see the
It's a
witches?
spell. It's fine.
He gets killed. But his dad's a witch.
Yeah, his dad's a male witch.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, the witch is like break into his house and then like they steal some of his, what should I call it? Reproductive fluids, and then cast a
Nice.
spell on him to make him nice, and then he like becomes gay, I guess. So then his dad has to kill him or something. The whole movie, it's not a movie.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Your dad does have to kill you. It goes without saying.
The
Yeah.
movie is basically just like a woke PSA, and I'm watching it like waiting for a story to happen, and it's not there.
Yeah.
But I mentioned that, but there's also
I
another-
was watching Waiting for the Gay Sex Scene, and it never came either. So both of us were disappointed.
Yeah. So you're disappointed for other reasons. There's another movie called Spiral, and this one is, oh man, I think we talked about this in one of the Timcast segments. So you know what Shudder is? Shudder, like SHUDDR. It's a subscription service for horror shows and
yeah.
movies.
No.
I love horror. It's like my favorite genre. I love the what is that movie with Nicole Kidman? The Others.
Yeah, I think so.
That movie's awesome. Yeah. That movie's great. And I love old 80s movies. I just watched The Stuff. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It's where people start eating trash out of the ground, but then it turns out it's like, alive.
Gutter punks.
It's what?
Yeah,
They're
gutter
eating
bugs,
people?
yeah, trash
Oh, so there's Shudder has this film called Spiral, and it starts with an interracial gay couple who have a daughter,
Strong
and
start.
they move to a new town. No, I'm fine. I don't care about that. I don't care about Static being at a Black Lives Matter protest. I care about the story making sense. How are you going to have supervillains if, like, how are the bullies? Were they at the Black Lives Matter protest? Like, what's going on? I guess. All right. So anyway, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, I didn't really think twice about the interracial gay couple being, the characters. I was just like, it's 2020, man. I was like, whatever. But then very early on, you get a glimpse of what the movie is. I'm just going to spoil the whole movie for everybody. If you're a subscriber to Shudder, well, too bad.
Witches.
Yeah. It turns out
Witches again.
there are immortal white people who explain that they choose minority and marginalized families on purpose to frame for murders so that they can sacrifice them for immortality. And then in the end, the bad guy's like, there will always be people to fear and no one will ever believe you. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, dude. Like you said, you can give me a teaspoon of propaganda for every cup of entertainment I get. That was the whole thing, was propaganda.
I liked the 100. I honestly thought that show was kind of good, but by the end, so everyone's a lesbian, right? There's one of those shows where like all the leaders are women and they're all lesbians, and all of the women are the best fighters. And it's sort of like a sci-fi thing, but then they give the backstory and they just came on a spaceship, and there's like, they don't give you any logistical reason why in this world the women, like, it's not, they're like Amazonian women. It's just like normal women, and for some reason the women are better fighters than guys. They don't explain, and you go, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You just have to be like,
I watched
these fight scenes better be sweet, dude.
I watched a really good, there's a video explaining why Captain America and Captain Marvel are like totally different. Like Captain America's good, everyone loved it. Captain Marvel, like people kind of like groaned at it, and some people kind of just accepted it. And they explain that one of the issues is, like early on in Captain America, they explain to you Steve Rogers, Captain America, he's a weak guy. He's weak, but he's willing to stand up. He's a scrawny dude getting beat up outside of a theater, and it establishes...
Yeah, they have to give you that. Like, establish your world. I'll believe your world, but you just have to give me an explanation. Even if the explanation is stupid, they go, he stepped in a puddle, they gave him this. You go, okay. Like, you just... Right. Otherwise, you go, it doesn't make sense in your context.
But in this context, what they're basically saying is, you know who Steve Rogers is. He's not the strongest guy, but he's willing to stand up and defend himself no matter what. And then he eventually gets superpowers, and then you see this guy of really good moral character who wants to protect people.
It's consistent. Now
is powerful and says, I'm going to do the right thing. Whereas Captain Marvel she's always strong. She's always been the best. And the man, like, there's a guy.
Yeah, they've completely removed themselves from any hero's journey. All of these, like, woman power movies basically became Steven Seagal movies where there's no adversity. Like, they start out and she's just like, ready to kick ass. And then she goes, beats up everyone. And then, it's like, there's no even point where she wasn't going to potentially make it.
This is the problem, I guess, with the modern version of, I guess, Gen Z storytelling. It's probably millennials who are writing these comics. But think about this. If you've got, let's take a look at the Black Lives Matter narrative, right? That they're doing a comic where they're like telling the cops you're killing innocent people. Well, that's a gross oversimplification of what's happening. The cops are immediately the bad guys who fire on them for no reason. In Captain Marvel, she's actually the bad guy. In the beginning of the movie, some guy on a motorcycle tells her to smile. So she steals his clothes and his motorcycle and presumably just leaves him like nude in a parking lot.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like, when that happened, I was kind of like, dude, I don't want to root for this character. Some guy made a snide comment, so she robbed him.
The reason for it, like, I find this even when I'm writing stuff, and especially when I was like doing more traditional stuff, there is this thing of like, you're not supposed to say this about this person, you're not supposed to say this about this, but like, so if you're gonna make people protagonists, they need, bad qualities and good qualities. But there's this sort of thing, like if you're going to write a woman, they're like, we'll make her shitty. And you're like, well, you can't make women bad. Like, that's bad for women. We're just going to make a woman character and like, here's our hero. She's like, can't critically think. No, you're like, what do you mean? You can't make, we need strong women characters with no flaws. Well, that's not really a good story that there's no flaws.
Think about, do you see what happened with Wimix in the other day?
No, but how about that for that's how I get my superpowers is I'm at the women's march when some
Yes, I love it.
yeah,
And then
someone's
the police fire tear gas at them
yeah.
for no reason.
Police fired tear gas at the women, but it didn't need to. It turns out they thought they fired tear gas. Turns out they were just already crying because
Oh my gosh.
the whole women thing.
And it was their love for the fellow man that granted them superpowers.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what it was.
No,
yeah.
so
I'll tell you the one last thing. That this is a joke, but I said that
All right.
what happens at the women's march is they all march from one side of the city, and halfway through they forget something and go back.
Yeah. That's right.
and that's it. And they gain superpowers.
Yeah, they all forget something, and at the end it was their superpowers. And I donated money to the women's march. I hope they find a cure.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right, wait. So did you see that? you see the Wimixin thing with Twitch?
No, tell me about this.
Twitch put out a video where they were like, we want all Wimixin to be supported.
Oh yeah. No, of course. Yeah.
And the left got really mad. It was like
yeah, they got fired up, and then they had issued an apology, being like, "Our bad."
Yeah, we didn't realize that, calling you Wimixin, we thought it was inclusive.
You're making this very hard to pander to you right now.
know, right?
No, but think about that. They're like, okay, we're gonna make a movie. We want to get feminists and women to come watch. So let's do the hero's journey. And they're going through the script, and they're like, let's make it very much like Captain America. Everyone loved that one. Well, we can't make her weak.
Correct, yeah.
Like Steve Rogers was a scrawny, weak guy in the beginning. Okay, well, we'll just have her be strong. But how do we then establish her journey? Amnesia. She's always strong, but she has amnesia. So that's what they did. That's the movie. That's the movie. And then they do this thing where they're like, okay, what's her conflict?
Her
The
Achilles
men-
heel, $5,000 purses. I
Yes.
think that's her kryptonite.
The men keep telling her to control her emotions.
Oh.
I'm not kidding. That's the movie. She's
course.
always strong. She gets amnesia, and then the guy says, "You're too emotional." And at the end, she uses her emotions and says something like, "I can do whatever I want, I guess." But so the point I'm making is, they could not make a flawed female character out of fear that they'll get ripped apart by the woke left. Look, you say Wimixin thinking you're pandering to them, and you're actually insulting them. There's no right way to address
I think the
this.
trans people got kind of fired up about that one too.
They did. Understandable.
Well, Count Dankula had probably the best response. He said, imagine fighting your whole life to transition and to be considered a woman, and then these woke corporations just come out and tell you you're not. And then all these woke leftists were like, Dankula redemption arc? And he's like, no, I've always felt that way. Stop acting like it's a different opinion.
But then he did show the second video of his dog. So
The Black Lives Matter one?
it was worse than
that
the
was great. I love that one.
yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.